The third element in the cement of integrity, or the mortar of integrity, is discipline. Discipline is the continual and consistent training that brings about positive results. We tend to think of it as punishment, but it literally comes from a word that means learner or to learn. Discipline is about learning, getting better. Can you imagine going to pay good money to hear a band play that never practices? What if your favorite baseball team or soccer team or hockey team quit practicing? You would say they were undisciplined. You'd quit going to the games because they would most definitely quit winning. You have to practice in order to get it right. I went with my sister-in-law one time to buy golf clubs for my brother, and while we were at the store, I was playing with one of the clubs, and one of the golf pros came out. He looked at me for a minute and said, "How's your game? Do you enjoy playing?" I said, "Man, look, I love to play, but I am not good." So he said, "Well, why don't you show me what you do and let me help you with your swing and with your game?" I said, "Sure, let's do it." So I grabbed my club and I stood there and I did my swing. He looked at it, and now listen, folks, the guy was super nice to me. He was so kind. And he talked with me for about 20 minutes. But here's what it all crunched down to. If you play golf, this will mean something to you. My grip on the club was wrong. My stance was wrong. My ball placement in my stance was wrong. And my swing was wrong. Now, if you know anything at all about golf, you know there's nothing else I could have done wrong. If I'm using a golf ball and a golf club, those are my 6 elements to play. And I had 4 out of the 6 wrong. He worked with me tenderly, gently, firmly, and he told me how to do it. And I finally was doing what he told me to do, and I looked at him and I said, "Man, this feels funny." And he said, "Hey, anytime you do something wrong long enough, it always feels funny when you start doing it right." Probably there are at least 1 or 2 things that we've talked about in our discussion of integrity that you think, "Man, if I did that, it would be strange," or "It would sure feel funny if I had to start doing that," or "Wow, I would feel weird even trying." I would like to suggest to you that anytime you do something wrong long enough, it always feels funny when you start trying to do it right. My son and I used to play a video game together that involved some jumps and some points that you got for those jumps. Every time we played, he won. I mean, every time. And we enjoyed the time together, so we played a lot, but every time we played, he would beat me. So I went in one day and practiced and practiced and practiced, and instead of my normal 60,000 points, I got 100,000. And he got 120,000. He beat me every time we played. One weekend, he had a friend over to the house, and they were playing games all weekend, so I didn't even get on the computer. They just had their fun. I left them alone. It was awesome. At the end of the weekend, his friend went home, and he came in there where I was, and he said, "Hey, if you wasn't scared, you'd come race with me." And I said, "Well, boy, how about getting you a towel to cry on, and let's get it on." So I went in there and we did our little race on the computer. He let me go first. Now remember, he's been practicing all weekend with his friend. I haven't even been on the computer, and he already beats me. So I said, "Okay, I'm going to do well." And I focused and I decided, this is it. I'm going to do my best. And I did about 3/4 of what my normal average was. I said, "Well, that's it. He's going to have bragging rights. He's going to beat me. This is it." He sat down and started playing, and halfway through the time limit, he had no points at all. And so I looked at him and I said, "What's going on?" And he looked and almost had tears in his eyes, and he said, "I can't land any of the jumps." Well, if you've done a lot of work on computers or anything like that, you know eye strain. If you've done long projects, you know that mental fatigue sets in. And I said, "Okay, that's it. That's what's going on with him. His eyes are tired. Brain's tired, he's having trouble concentrating. This is time for me to teach him about setting some boundaries and quitting playing so much and reducing the stress on your eyes by looking away from the screen." So I asked him, I said, "Elijah, didn't you and your friend play this game all weekend?" And he said, "We sure did." I said, well, you were landing your jumps earlier, weren't you, son? And he said, well, actually, my friend didn't have this game. And instead of me putting up really good scores and making him feel bad, when I found out that all he could do was wreck, we just made a game of seeing who could have the biggest wrecks. I said, guess what, son? You got it right. You practiced wrecking until you can't win. You've practiced failure until you can't make it. In your life now, you've got the opportunity. We've given you the tools. You've studied your materials. You've made out your plans. Now it's time for you to plan out from this point how you're going to live your lifestyle of integrity. You need to plan to practice, to continue training yourself in integrity. The more you work on it, the better you'll get. But if you practice failure, you'll get failure. If practice makes perfect, if practice is the way to do it, shouldn't you practice success? Some of you may pick on that term, practice makes perfect. Practice makes perfect is a good concept. Practice makes perfect is a good thought pattern. It's a good focus. But you need to remember that you can get something perfectly wrong. If you want to get good results, you have to practice success. Practice the right answer. Heard one coach one time say, practice doesn't make perfect, perfect practice makes perfect. He had a good point. A few years ago, I was watching a professional football coach on television, and they were talking about amateur players going into the pros, and was it difficult or could they do it? And this coach said, in the amateur leagues, in college football, in all of the sports, not just football, he said, they practice until they get it right. And then he said, but when you get to the professional level, you practice until you can't get it wrong. There is a big difference between practicing until you get it right and practicing until you can't get it wrong. Now, of course, we all make mistakes, and he wasn't going to the absolute there, but you understand what he's saying. We need to practice integrity until the norm for us is to do it right. If you're in a habit of practicing failures, compromising your integrity, jeopardizing your lifestyle of integrity, then you need to cement that in a positive way. Practice it until you get it right. Talk to some of your friends and find out what are some things they're practicing on. What are they working on to get it right? And for the rest of your course, as you're working out your game plan, think about what can I do to get integrity right in my life? What can I do to get me in line with who I need to be, where I need to be? What does my plan need to be? It's up to you, remember. Your integrity is yours, yours alone. You alone have control over it. So if you don't practice, what result are you really looking for? It's up to you.